What's up, Raider Nation? The draft is finally over, and welcome to our first episode post-draft. We got a lot to talk about. Joining us today is Matt Schneidman of the Mercury News, and obviously my co-host Gavin, and this is JB. Hey, Matt, thanks for coming on. How you doing today?
No problem, guys. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
No problem. So let's get to it, man. What did you first think? You know, when Goodell came on and said with the 15th pick, the Raiders select Colton Miller. What went through your head?
Well, I already knew who it was going to be before because that's just how Twitter is. People have it all out before Goodell. So I wasn't even watching at that point. I was trying to get my story up. But I thought it was an interesting pick. Derwin James, the safety from Florida State, was still on the board. Tremaine Edmonds, the young linebacker with a bunch of potential from Virginia Tech, was still on the board. They needed a defensive playmaker, but they also certainly needed a guy who can step in and start on the offensive line. People can say what they want about, Miller had his struggles in college. Pro Football Focus had him rated as, I think, the 38th best pass blocking offensive lineman entering the draft. But this is a guy the Raiders are very confident in. He's super athletic. I think he set the combine record for broad jump for an offensive lineman. This is a guy they think can come in and start right away at right tackle. So if they think, I'm not going to question John Gruden and Reggie McKenzie because they know way more about football than I do. If they think this guy can come in and start right away on their offensive line, then it's a good pick. And I'm not one to really, grade or judge picks right after they happen because you just never know. That's just guesswork. So we'll wait to see about this one. But obviously it had its doubters because there were more flashy names on the board. I like it in the fact that it was a sound pick for a big area of need.
There are a lot of draft experts, former GMs. They talk about, you can have really good running backs coming out of round one, but you draft you draft position of value in the first round, and maybe they thought that offensive tackle obviously a big value. It's just such a big need, such a value position that no matter if you have a really good safety like Derwin James or a linebacker like Tremaine Edmonds, you go with someone like that. So, it all depends how you look at it. We won't really know until about a year or two down the line, right? But what about overall? I mean, it seemed to me that as the draft went on from round to round, it just got better. Overall, what are your thoughts about it?
A lot of risks being taken, whether that be health-wise or character-wise. Arden Key, the edge rusher from LSU. You have Mo Hurst, which is if that pick works out and if he stays healthy, that could be the steal of the draft there in the 5th round, I think. Best value pick in my mind in the whole draft if it works out. Yeah. Then you have Nick Nelson, the cornerback from Wisconsin, who they took in the 4th, who recently damaged his meniscus. He won't be able to step on a field, he said, for about another month. Won't be 100% until fall camp. And then Azim Victor, the linebacker from Washington they took in the 6th round, had 2 separate suspensions last season, charged with a DUI in November and was suspended indefinitely for the end of his college career. So a lot of risks, but we know the Raiders are a place that likes to give guys second chances, and that was something John Gruden and Reggie McKenzie emphasized. John Gruden said Friday night it felt like Al Davis was making the picks, from the afterlife. And John Gruden's mom actually called him and said, is Al calling in these picks? Because it's very old-fashioned rate. Some small school guys, some guys with great potential, but with checkered paths and risks that the Raiders hope work out. So if all these picks work out, these guys are going to look like geniuses.
Yeah.
Are you surprised that the Raiders didn't take a running back this year?
A little bit. I thought they were going to take one in the middle rounds because, they don't really have a running back on the roster who's shown he can catch passes. I mean, Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington did a little bit in spurts last season, but they need a guy to really complement Marshawn Lynch, not like a platoon of guys who has some ball security issues that can only run in on the goal line like Washington. So we'll see if any of these undrafted free agent signings come in and have an impact, but I was a little bit surprised because John Gruden has said, as pinpointed running back, they need a guy who can factor in the passing game as well. Marshawn Lynch can't do that. So I guess that means they have confidence in Doug Martin because they bring him on, the veteran who is out to prove himself that he's not what he's been in Tampa the past couple of years. So it's going to be really interesting to see if he can factor in the passing game too.
Yeah. It looks like first 3 rounds, Raiders win for need, and then they win for whatever best positions available. We got a kicker as well. Do you think that might spell the end of Giorgio Tavecchio just because the Johnny Townsend, the punter we drafted, was the holder for the kicker, and they went to the same school?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I don't think it spells the end for him by any means. I think John Gruden has proven he wants to bring in competition for every position. I think long snapper is the only position that doesn't have competition at it right now. But Giorgio kicked well last year. I think Pinheiro he was a very good kicker, especially from long distance in college. And I think Gruden wants to see how that Florida pairing works out. Like you said, right. They were roommates at Florida. Townsend hailed for Pinheiro at Florida. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of chemistry that pairing brings. But by no means does I think it spell the end of Giorgio's tenure. Townsend, when we talked to him yesterday, he said he's held for mostly right-footed kickers, but he's practiced and known how to hold for left-footers too. So it's going to be interesting to see the differences because it is hard. Gruden has said before, it's not as simple as it seems holding for a right-footed kicker as it is for a left-footed kicker. So that'll be a little trial and error there, but nothing more than some competition. Would I be surprised if Eddie wins it over Giorgio? No. Would I be surprised if Giorgio stays? No. So I know I'm kind of downplaying the kicker spot, but I think that's just what it is some more competition.
Yeah, definitely.
After the draft, one thing glaring need that to me that looked like was a coverage linebacker. Do you think that any trades or anything might happen to get the linebacker group upgraded? I mean, only person we have is Tahir Whitehead. He's more of a run defender. There's no one that can, man the middle in passing downs.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I think while Navarro Bowman isn't a great guy against the pass, it's still very possible the Raiders bring him back. We asked Reggie McKenzie yesterday, does picking Azim Victor in the 6th round or does anything in this draft indicate a stance away from Navarro Bowman? He said, no, we're never going to close the door on bringing back good players. And Navarro Bowman is a starting caliber middle linebacker in the NFL. So I wouldn't close the door on that just yet because it's taking a while. You have Tahir Whitehead, Markel Lee, Nicholas Morrow, I think, is going to play a nice role on this team. He was probably the best of the rookie class last year, and he was an undrafted guy. So him, Corey James, battled injury. So if all those guys are healthy, I don't think the linebacking core is going to be as bad as some people think, but it would certainly help if Navarro Bowman came back.
Yeah. What was the most surprising thing to you in the draft, like when you look back at it?
That's a good question. I would probably say that they took the Sam Houston State defensive tackle P.J. Hall in the 2nd round. I know they traded back, but here's a guy who's less than 6'1". He told us he's 6 foot and a quarter, but he blocked 14 kicks in college.
Yeah.
He's about 6 foot 300, so he can really get leverage on every single offensive lineman he'll go against is bigger. I like the pick strictly because it fills a position of need. And the fact that they got P.J. Hall 3 rounds before Maurice Hurst, I don't think anyone would have seen that coming. Did the Hall pick surprise me? Yeah, because us writers were scrambling to look for information on him right after the pick because none of us had ever heard of him. And in the draft packet with a bunch of prospects that we got at the Raiders facility, he wasn't even in that. So we had to scramble a little bit to find him. Once you look at his numbers and talk to him, you see more of why the Raiders picked him. Is he a huge guy in stature? No, but he's quick. He's athletic. He had a freakish pro day at Sam Houston State because he was not invited to the Combine. First player drafted this year, not invited to the Combine. So it's definitely an interesting pick. Intrigued to see how he fits in on that defensive line, which clearly needs some improvement at D tackle.
Yeah, I saw
Gil. Do you think that, sorry, JB, I was just going to say, do you see Maurice Hurst and P.J. Hall potentially making a good tandem along that line?
Yeah, I still think Justin Elliott gets one of those starter spots because they re-signed him to a 3-year deal this offseason, and he's a good a run blocker. Can he get after the quarterback? No. But I wouldn't be surprised if Mario Edwards Jr. plays some defensive tackle this year. Obviously, Hall and Hurst could certainly factor in. Would I be surprised if it was them two at some point on the D-line? No. But like I said before with the kicker spot, John Gruden is bringing in all these guys. And then in the next couple of weeks and months, he's going to start to wade through what he sees. I know we're looking at the roster right now and trying to put together combinations of, I don't know, the biggest names or the flashiest prospects. But as we've seen, we never know what John Gruden's going to do. And I think that defensive line especially is going to be really interesting with the guys on the outside in Irvin Mack and now Arden Key, and then whatever combination of guys they have on the inside. Don't forget Eddie Vanderdoes and Trayvon Hester.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last year. Coming off season-ending injuries, so we'll see how they fare when they heal.
Yeah, that should be
where
interesting.
do you see Eddie fit in that scenario?
Pardon? Say that again?
Where do you see Eddie Vanderdoes fitting into that scenario? Because obviously it's quite a big group now. So what sort of technique and where do you see him fitting in this season?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I wasn't really impressed with much he did last year. I know he was their third-round pick, so they used a relatively high selection on him. Right off the bat, especially with they brought in 2 defensive tackles in the draft. They re-signed one. Clearly, they think they need some upgrades at the position, so I wouldn't be surprised if he got lost in the mix. You saw them trade away 1 D tackle yesterday in Jahad Ward to the Cowboys. I think you saw that coming. He wasn't going to make the team this year. But I think they're going to give Eddie another chance, obviously, because he started for most of the season. Sure, he didn't play all that much, but he can stop the run too. I think what they need more is D tackles who can reach the quarterback. You see a guy like Aaron Donald, like Ndamukong Suh, they're going to see those guys the first week of the season. And I'm not saying by any means that they want Eddie Vanderdoes to be those guys, because those are probably the 2 best D tackles in the game. But they need some pass rush and some versatility there at D tackle. So I don't see Eddie Vanderdoes being that just yet, but we'll see what he makes of his sophomore season.
Yeah, maybe he's more of a nose tackle.
Yeah.
It's going to be a fun training camp competition, that's for sure. What are your, after the first or second day, John Gruden came out and said, yeah, it's, there were some tense moments in the war room because he's just a tough guy to deal with. That brought me to, what do you think him and Reggie, how do you think they'll work? Do you think Reggie will stay for a longer period, or do you think this might be the end of Reggie because of, just John wants to be, calling the shots?
I think there will be a reevaluation after this year. I think this year will be a trial run. Gruden was very complimentary of McKenzie in the role he played, the role the personnel staff played. There was a report this morning, actually, that there's going to be an overhaul of the scouting staff shortly here, which I'm not surprised with. The scouts have been working on evaluating this draft class for a year now, so they needed their opinions, and now Gruden would want to bring in his guys, which is very reasonable. McKenzie's going to stay, at least for this year. Would I be surprised if he stayed beyond that? No, but I think this year, like everyone expected, will be somewhat of a trial run for their partnership, even though they've spoken very highly about each other in the time that they've worked together so far.
Yeah. Hey, how was the atmosphere there, during the draft process? You can tell a lot by body language. Was Reggie happy with the players they selected, or like what was the body language there at the facility?
Yeah, I mean, it was real hectic because they made 7 trades, acquired 9 players in the draft, traded for Martavis Bryant, traded for Ryan Switzer, the returner and slot receiver from Dallas. Real hectic. So Gruden and Reggie McKenzie were obviously stressed out. They had to relax a little bit, and they were really happy with their draft picks. Just watching some of the videos on Raiders.com of them calling these guys, they're fired up. They know that if they get this right, like I said, they're going to look like geniuses. So they're excited for what some of these guys can bring. And Gruden has